Naya had always grown up believing she understood the ways of winter. Her people, the Apache, taught their children early how to read the wind, how to listen to the land, and how to respect nature's moods. She had lived through many cold nights and sudden storms before, but nothing prepared her for the storm that came rolling across the desert plains on the night she tried to make her way home. She had started her journey early in the morning, when the sun was still warm and gentle. Her horse, a calm mare named Willow, walked steadily along the dusty trail. Naya had hoped to reach her family by the next evening. They were preparing for a ceremony she did not want to miss, something that meant a great deal to her heart. She carried a small bundle of gifts tied to her saddle and a blanket over her shoulders. She believed her travels would be peaceful and simple, but the land had other plans. Through the afternoon, the sky slowly shifted from bright blue to a pale gray. Naya noticed the change, but she didn't worry at first. Winter clouds often passed without trouble. But then the wind picked up, sharp and cold, blowing across her face like needles. Willow snorted and shook her head, uneasy. That was the first sign something was wrong. By late afternoon, the air turned painfully cold. Naya pulled her blanket tighter around her body. The wind came in stronger gusts now, pushing against her and her horse. She kept glancing at the horizon, hoping to see familiar landforms that would tell her she was close to shelter. But everything looked strange. The land felt wide and empty. Even the birds had gone silent, which gave her a feeling she couldn't explain. Then, without warning, the storm dropped on her like a heavy curtain. A wall of white snow rolled over the plains, swallowing everything in sight. The flakes were thick and came down fast, blinding her. The sky grew dark, even though it was still early in the day. Naya's breath turned into thin clouds in front of her face. She could barely see Willow's ears through the swirling snow. The wind howled, loud enough that she felt it inside her chest. Naya spoke softly to her horse, trying to keep her calm. But Willow grew more and more frightened. The mare stepped nervously, ears twitching. The storm's noise, the sudden cold, and the shifting shadows made her want to turn back the way they came. "It's all right," Naya whispered, trying to sound brave, even though she felt fear growing inside her ribs. "We'll be okay. Just a little farther." But the wind was too strong, and Willow couldn't hear her words. The mare suddenly jerked sideways, startled by something Naya couldn't see. Before Naya could grab hold, Willow twisted, pulling free from the reins. In a burst of panic, the horse bolted into the storm and vanished behind the wall of snow. "Willow!" Naya shouted. But the storm swallowed her voice. The sound disappeared into the wind as if she had never spoken at all. Her heart dropped. She reached out blindly, stumbling forward, hoping to catch even the shape of her horse. But there was nothing but white spinning around her. Willow was gone. Alone now, Naya stood still for a moment, trying to breathe, trying to think. Without her horse, the journey became much harder. Her legs were already cold, her fingers stiff inside her gloves. She had miles left to go, and the storm was only growing stronger. Still, she didn't allow herself to panic. Her elders had always told her, "When the land becomes angry, stay calm. The land listens to calm hearts." She repeated those words silently, steadying her breath. If she stayed in one place too long, she knew she would grow too cold. She had to keep moving. She forced herself to start walking, choosing what she hoped was the right direction. The snow blew sideways in strong gusts, cutting across her cheeks. She kept her arms tucked against her body to hold in every bit of warmth she could. Her boots crunched through the fresh snow, each step heavier than the last. Time felt strange inside the storm. She couldn't tell if minutes or hours were passing. The world around her was just white, nothing but white. It felt like she was inside a dream where the landscape kept shifting, where the ground and sky were the same color, and where her own footprints disappeared almost as soon as she made them. Her legs began to ache. Her feet felt numb. The cold seeped through her clothes in a slow, creeping way, like invisible fingers wrapping around her. She tried to keep her mind clear by thinking of her family, their faces, the warm fire in the center of the camp, the sound of familiar voices. She imagined the smell of cooking bread and the laughter of children running in circles. She imagined her mother smiling, waiting for her at the doorway. Those thoughts kept her going for a while. But the storm didn't ease. The wind pushed harder, forcing her to lean forward just to stay upright. She stumbled more than once, catching herself on her hands. Snow collected on her eyelashes. Her blanket, once warm, was wet and heavy on her shoulders. Her breath grew shallow, and she felt a strange fog forming in her mind. Her thoughts moved slowly, as if her brain were half asleep. She knew this was dangerous. She knew the cold was winning. "Naya," she whispered to herself, trying to stay awake. "Keep moving. Just a little more." But her strength was fading. Her legs finally buckled beneath her, and she fell onto her knees. The snow felt soft, almost gentle, like a cushion. She pushed herself up again, shaking, but her body refused to cooperate. She took another step, then another. But they felt like steps taken underwater, slow, heavy, and uncertain. She kept hoping she would see something, anything, a tree, a fence line, a cabin, a shape in the distance. But the storm hid everything. Eventually, her steps grew smaller. Her hands trembled. She felt so tired, more tired than she had ever felt in her life. Her body wanted to rest. The snow didn't feel cold anymore. It felt strangely warm, as if it were trying to pull her in and lull her to sleep. Naya fell forward again, landing softly in the snow. She lay there on her side, breathing slowly. She knew she should get up. She knew she should keep fighting. But her arms felt heavy, and her eyes kept drifting closed. The storm's howling faded into a distant sound. Everything grew quiet around her. She could no longer feel her fingers or toes. She tried to move her arm, but couldn't. In her fading awareness, she thought she heard something, a deep sound. Maybe the sound of hooves or someone calling, but she wasn't sure if it was real or only in her mind. Her eyes fluttered shut. The world went calm, as if wrapped in silence. The last thing she felt was the cold snow beneath her cheek. And then, there was nothing at all. Cal Turner had lived most of his life far from crowds, choosing peace over noise, silence over chatter. People in town called him the quiet cowboy. Not because he disliked others, but because he found comfort in listening more than speaking. He preferred the sound of cattle walking through dry grass, the creak of a saddle, and the wind brushing past the barn. Life was simple out here, predictable, calm, and Cal liked it that way. He woke early that morning, just as he always did. The sky had been clear the night before, but storms in the desert could change with surprising speed. When he stepped outside, the world was covered in deep winter snow, the kind that came without warning, falling heavily and silently in the night. Everything looked softer now, white hills, still air, and a quietness that stretched across the land like a blanket. Cal pulled his coat tighter around himself as he walked toward the barn. His breath came out in small clouds, and the snow crunched beneath his boots. His cattle were calm, but he knew a storm like this could cause trouble if he didn't check on things. Broken fences, animals wandering off, or branches falling, anything could happen. He saddled his horse, a strong brown gelding named Rusty, who stood patiently as Cal tightened the cinch. Rusty was reliable, steady, and not easily startled. Together, they made their way across the snowy fields, the cold wind brushing against Cal's face. The land stretched far and empty. And usually Cal liked this part of his morning, just him, his horse, and open sky. But today, he felt a small sense of concern he couldn't quite explain. Maybe it was the stillness of the morning, or the way the storm had arrived so suddenly. Something felt off. He rode along slowly, guiding Rusty between the snow-covered bushes and the frozen creek that cut through the property. As he reached the far end of the pasture, he stopped to look around. The fences seemed fine. The cattle were where they needed to be, and nothing looked broken or damaged. Cal was about to turn back when Rusty suddenly lifted his head, ears pointing forward. The horse shifted his weight, sensing something Cal hadn't noticed yet. "What is it, boy?" Cal whispered, gently patting Rusty's neck. Rusty let out a soft breath, the kind he made when something unfamiliar caught his attention. Cal followed the direction of Rusty's gaze, squinting his eyes. At first, he saw nothing but more snow. But then, a faint shape caught his attention. A dark patch near the frozen creek, almost hidden beneath the snow. It might have been a fallen log, it might have been a rock, but something about it made Cal feel unsettled. The shape was too still, too quiet, and too smooth. With a nudge of his heel, he guided Rusty closer. As they approached, the shape grew clearer. It wasn't a log. It wasn't a rock. It was a person. Cal's heart gave a hard, quick beat inside his chest. He dismounted immediately, the snow crunching loudly as he hurried forward. Rusty stayed still behind him, knowing his rider was focused on something serious. Cal dropped to his knees beside the still figure. A woman. Young. Her hair braided with beads. Frozen snow gathered along her lashes. Her clothes were soaked, and her skin looked pale in the winter light. He reached out carefully, touching her shoulder. She was cold, far too cold. "Miss?" he called softly, hoping she could hear him. There was no response. He leaned closer, placing a hand near her face, searching for the faintest breath. For a moment, he wasn't sure. Then, there it was. Weak, soft, but real. A breath. She was alive. Relief washed over him, but it was quickly followed by worry. She needed warmth. She needed shelter. And she needed both, fast. Cal wasn't the type to panic. He stayed calm, just as he always did. But his hands moved quickly. He removed his thick coat and wrapped it around her, tucking it gently around her arms and chest. The coat looked too big on her small frame, but it held the warmth she desperately needed. He lifted her carefully, holding her against him. She felt light, fragile, like she might fade away if he didn't hold her tight enough. Cal carried her to Rusty, murmuring to the horse to stay calm. "Easy, boy. We gotta get her back home." He settled the woman on the saddle first, keeping one arm around her so she wouldn't fall. Then he mounted behind her, guiding Rusty toward the cabin. The ride felt longer than usual, each minute filled with the sound of wind and the hope that she would keep breathing. Cal tried speaking softly to her as they rode, even though he wasn't sure she could hear. "You're all right. Just hang on. We're close now." The cabin appeared through the snowy haze like a promise, a small wooden shelter surrounded by silence. Smoke rose faintly from the chimney, leftover warmth from the fire he had kept burning earlier. He brought Rusty to a stop and carried the woman inside, pushing the door shut behind him to keep out the cold air. Inside the cabin, warmth wrapped around them instantly. The fire in the stove still glowed with bright orange light. The room smelled faintly of wood and coffee. It was quiet, peaceful, and safe. Cal laid the woman gently on his bed, the softest place in the cabin. She didn't stir, but her breathing was still there. Slow, shallow, but present. He spoke softly, even though she lay silent. "You're gonna be all right. I'll keep the fire warm." He placed extra quilts over her, layering them one by one. Then he put water on the stove to warm, planning to help raise her temperature slowly. He remembered what his mother had taught him years ago about helping someone who had been too long in the cold. You had to warm them gently, not too fast, not too slow. As the room filled with comforting warmth, Cal sat beside her, watching her closely. He wasn't sure who she was or where she had come from, but he knew she had fought a hard storm. He admired her strength, even in her unconscious state. He studied her face for a moment. She looked peaceful now, almost as if she were resting after a long day. Her hair, decorated with small beads and bits of colored string, told him she came from a people with strong traditions. Her clothes, though wet and cold, were skillfully made. She was someone with a story, one he hoped he would learn if she woke. He kept checking her breathing every few minutes, making sure it stayed steady. The storm continued outside, but inside the cabin, it was warm, glowing, and quiet. The more time passed, the more Cal felt a strange mix of worry and calm. He wanted her to open her eyes, to know she was safe. But he also trusted that she would wake when her body was ready. As he sat there, he thought about how strange life could be. One morning, he had set out for a simple check on his cattle, and now he was watching over a woman he had never met, hoping she would wake in his quiet cabin. Rusty's soft hoof sounds outside reminded him he needed to care for his horse too. After making sure the woman was still breathing comfortably, Cal stepped outside briefly to unsaddle Rusty, give him water, and brush the snow from his coat. The storm's edge had softened, but the cold still pressed against him, making him eager to return inside. When he stepped back into the cabin, the room felt warmer than before. The fire crackled softly, filling the space with a gentle glow. He walked to the bedside and checked on the woman again. She was still asleep, but her breathing sounded a little stronger. Cal exhaled slowly, feeling a wave of quiet relief. He pulled up a chair beside the bed and settled in, keeping watch. He didn't know her name. He didn't know where she had come from. But he knew one thing for certain: finding her in the snow had not been an accident. And he would stay by her side until she opened her eyes. Naya woke slowly, as if she were rising from a deep, quiet river. At first, she felt nothing but warmth. A thick, comforting warmth that wrapped around her like the softest blanket. It felt strange, almost unreal, because the last thing she remembered was the sharp cold of the storm and the feeling of snow against her skin. She blinked, confused. Her eyelashes felt heavy, and her mind was still foggy. The air around her smelled like firewood and something warm cooking nearby. There was a soft, crackling sound, gentle and steady, almost like the sound of leaves shifting in the wind. She could hear it clearly, but she didn't yet know where she was. When she finally opened her eyes, everything looked different from the world she remembered before collapsing. Wooden walls. A warm glow coming from a stove that burned quietly in the corner of the room. She lay on a soft bed covered in layers of quilts, each one warmer than the last. For a moment, she didn't move. She wasn't sure if she was dreaming. She wasn't even sure if she had survived the storm. She slowly turned her head to the side, and that's when she saw him. A man sat a short distance away, on a wooden chair beside a small table. He wasn't looking at her. He seemed deep in thought, staring at a cup of steaming tea in his hands. His hat was set on the floor near his boots, and his coat hung by the door. His posture was relaxed, but quiet, as if he didn't want to disturb anything in the peaceful room. He had rough hands and a strong build, but his face looked calm and gentle. His eyes, when he finally lifted them, held a steady kindness, as if he was used to watching over things with care. Naya's breath caught softly in her throat. She didn't know this man. She didn't know how she had gotten here, but she could feel no danger. Only warmth, only safety. The man noticed her movement. His eyes widened slightly, not in surprise that frightened, but in relief. He set the cup down slowly and stood up, walking toward the bed with quiet steps. "You're awake," he said softly, as if speaking too loudly might break the moment. Naya tried to speak, but her voice came out weak and small. "Where am I?" The man pulled the chair closer and sat down beside her again. His voice stayed gentle as he answered. "You're in my cabin," he said. "Found you out in the snow by the creek yesterday. You were barely breathing." Naya tried to remember, and small pieces of the storm returned to her mind. The wind, the cold, the way her horse had run off, the moment her legs gave out. She looked down at the thick blankets around her, then back at him. You. He nodded once. Had to get you out of that storm. Brought you here. You've been sleeping ever since. Naya felt a wave of gratitude rise inside her chest. She wanted to sit up, but when she tried, her body felt too weak. The man noticed and quickly placed a hand against the mattress, not touching her, but offering steady reassurance. Take it slow, he said. Your body's still tired. Here. Drink this. He reached for a bowl on the table, filled with warm broth. The smell drifted gently toward her, comforting and mild. He held the bowl out, but seeing her shaky hands, he hesitated. Can you hold it? He asked quietly. She nodded, though she wasn't sure she could. When she lifted her hands, they trembled. The cowboy noticed, but he didn't look annoyed or impatient. Instead, he held the bowl steady while she guided it to her lips, helping without making her feel helpless. The broth warmed her instantly, spreading heat through her chest and stomach. It felt like life returning to her limbs. She drank slowly, and the man watched carefully, making sure she didn't choke or spill. When she finished, he took the bowl back and set it aside. Thank you, she whispered, her voice a little stronger now. He nodded again, leaning back slightly. Name's Cal Turner, he said simply. I live out here on my own most days. Naya studied him for a moment. His calmness, his steady presence, the quiet way he spoke it all made her feel safe in a way she couldn't quite explain. I'm Naya, she said softly, from the Apache people. Cal nodded, understanding. Storm hit quick, faster than usual. You're lucky Rusty spotted you when he did. Rusty? She asked. My horse, he replied. Naya smiled faintly. Then I owe him thanks too. Cal gave a small smile back, a rare, gentle one that softened his normally serious face. It lasted only a moment, but Naya noticed it. You should rest more, he said. Your body's warming up, but don't push yourself too fast. She nodded and leaned back into the pillows. She felt tired, but this time, it wasn't the heavy, frightening tiredness from the snow. It was the simple tiredness of someone who felt warm and safe again. Cal stood and walked to the stove, adding another log to the fire. The room brightened with a warm glow. Naya watched him quietly, noticing how he moved slow, steady, as if he was used to living with patience. After a moment, he glanced back at her. Is there anyone who's expecting you? Someone I should tell you're safe? Naya swallowed gently. My family. They'll be worried. Cal nodded. Once the storm clears, I'll take you as far as I can. But for now, just rest. She closed her eyes for a moment, letting the warmth settle into her bones. Then she opened them again, her curiosity growing. Why did you help me? She asked softly. Cal paused. His eyes softened. But he looked almost shy about answering. Wouldn't leave anyone out in a storm like that, he said quietly. Not when I could help. Naya felt something warm in her chest, something deeper than gratitude. She didn't know this man, yet he had carried her, cared for her, watched over her. He had given her his own bed and kept the fire alive for her while she healed. Thank you, she said again, more firmly this time. Cal nodded once more, but she could see her words affected him. He wasn't used to praise. He wasn't used to people depending on him. He lived alone, spoke little, and rarely invited anyone into his quiet world. But now, here she was, resting in his bed, covered with his blankets, brought back to life by his kindness. The silence between them felt warm, not awkward, a peaceful silence. Naya looked at the room again. The space was simple but cared for. A few shelves with folded blankets, a small table with a lantern, a pair of boots by the door, a rope coiled neatly beside the wall. Everything about Cal's home felt steady and honest. He pulled the chair a little closer again, keeping a respectable distance but staying near enough that she felt she wasn't alone. "You should try to sleep more," he said softly. "Your body still needs rest." Naya nodded, though she wasn't sure if she could sleep again. But her eyes were heavy, and her breathing had softened. Cal stayed seated, watching over her quietly, just as he had been doing before she woke. As she drifted back into gentle rest, she felt a strange sense of comfort, safe in the cabin of a man she had never met, yet who felt somehow trustworthy, like a steady light in the middle of a dark storm. Before sleep claimed her fully, she whispered, "I'm glad you found me." Cal looked down at her, his face softening again. "I'm glad too," he said quietly. And the cabin, warm and peaceful, held them both in a quiet moment neither of them fully understood yet. The storm lasted longer than either Cal or Naya expected. When she woke again the next morning, soft light filtered through the frosted window, painting the room in pale gold. The world outside was still buried under thick snow, and the wind whispered lightly against the walls, as if reminding them that winter had not finished its visit. Naya sat up slowly. Her strength had returned a little, enough that she could move without feeling dizzy. The blankets around her were still warm, and a pleasant smell drifted from the stove, something familiar, soft, and comforting. Cal stood by the stove, stirring a pot with an old wooden spoon. He looked peaceful, his shoulders relaxed, his movements slow and steady. He didn't notice she was awake until she shifted her blankets. He turned and gave her a gentle smile. "Morning," he said quietly. "How are you feeling today?" "A little better," she replied, her voice soft but stronger than the day before. "Still tired, but warm." "That's good," he said. "Warm is what we want." Cal scooped some food into a bowl and brought it to her. It was a simple dish, warm oats with a bit of honey. But to Naya, it felt like a gift. She accepted it with grateful hands, taking small bites. They didn't speak much at first. The quiet inside the cabin felt calm, not uncomfortable. Outside, the snow continued falling gently, the flakes drifting like tiny feathers. After a few minutes, Naya glanced at the window. "The storm. It's still going?" "Yeah," Cal said. "Looks like it'll stay around all day. Roads'll be blocked. Trails too." Naya nodded, understanding what that meant. She wouldn't be able to travel. Not today. Maybe not even tomorrow. Cal seemed to read the worry on her face. "I'll get you home," he assured her gently. "Just gotta wait for the land to calm down a bit." She let out a quiet breath. "Thank you, Cal. I didn't mean to trouble you." Cal shook his head. "You're not trouble," he said simply. "Anyone would have helped." Naya wasn't sure if she believed that. She had seen how some people ignored strangers on the road, especially during storms. She knew not everyone opened their home so freely. But Cal had done so, without hesitation. She finished her meal and set the bowl aside. Cal took it from her and placed it on the table. For a moment, she sat quietly, looking around the cabin. She noticed small details she hadn't seen before: the smooth lines on the wooden table, the boots near the door polished from years of use, the lasso neatly coiled, the shelf holding a few books with worn covers. Everything in the cabin told her something about Cal. He lived simply. He valued routine. He cared for the things he owned. And though he lived alone, he didn't seem lonely. He seemed at peace. Cal sat back down in the chair beside her, resting his forearms on his knees. "You mind if I ask something?" he said quietly. She shook her head. "Go ahead. What were you doing out there? Traveling alone in a storm like that?" Naya lowered her eyes for a moment, gathering her thoughts. "I was trying to get home," she said. "My family is preparing for an important ceremony. I didn't want to miss it." I thought I had time. The sky looked clear when I started. Cal nodded slowly. Storms come fast out here. Hard to predict sometimes. I know, she said softly. But I didn't think it would be that strong. I didn't think I would lose my horse. Cal's eyes softened. I'm sorry about that. Naya gave a small nod. It still hurt to think of Willow running off in fear. She hoped the mare had found shelter somewhere safe. After a moment, Cal stood again. You feel strong enough to sit by the fire? He asked. Might be good to stretch a little. Yes, Naya said. And he helped her, gently, as she slid her feet to the floor. The wooden boards were warm from the stove, and the soft heat wrapped around her legs. She walked slowly to a small rug near the fire and sat down. Cal knelt to add another log, the flames rising with a warm glow. They sat in quiet companionship, listening to the crackle of the fire and the soft hush of the snow outside. After a while, Naya spoke. You live out here all alone? Cal nodded. Been this way a few years. Suits me fine. I like the quiet. Easier to think. Naya smiled softly. You don't mind being far from people? He thought for a moment before answering. Sometimes I miss company. Talking to someone. Sharing a meal. But quiet's been good for me. Teaches you patience. Naya watched him, noticing the lines of calm on his face. I don't know if I could live alone, she said. I'm used to being surrounded by family. We do everything together. Cook, gather, travel. Even worrying is something we do as a group. Cal smiled at that. Sounds nice. It is, she said. Can be noisy sometimes. But it's a warm kind of noise. Cal nodded. Maybe one day, I'll see it. She looked at him curiously. Have you ever spent time with Apache people before? No, he said simply. But I've crossed paths with travelers, traders. Heard stories. Seen the way your people take care of each other. Seems like you've got things figured out better than most. Naya felt a quiet pride at his words. We try, she said. We take care of those who wander. We don't leave people behind. We take care of those who wander. Cal's eyes flickered with a warm expression. Sounds like we think the same way, he said. They shared a small laugh, gentle and warm. The hours passed peacefully. Cal worked around the cabin, chopping wood, feeding Rusty, brushing snow off the roof while Naya rested or watched him quietly. She enjoyed learning about him simply by observing how he moved, how he treated his horse, how he kept his home in order. Everything he did seemed thoughtful, steady, and kind. When he came inside again, brushing snow off his coat, Naya asked, Do you always work this much? Cal chuckled softly. Out here, if I don't do it, nobody else will. She smiled. You manage well. He shrugged modestly, just doing what needs doing. As the day went on, the storm eased little by little, but the snow still lay deep outside, making travel impossible for now. Cal prepared dinner, simple vegetables and warm bread. They ate together at the small wooden table. It was the first time Naya had sat up for a meal since arriving, and she felt proud of her growing strength. Sitting across from Cal, the light from the lantern made his eyes look softer, more thoughtful. Naya felt strangely comfortable sharing a meal with him, as if they had known each other longer than a single day. After dinner, they sat by the fire again. Naya talked about her family, the traditions she loved, the stories her grandmother used to tell. Cal listened quietly, his eyes reflecting interest and respect. Then he shared small pieces of his own life, how he grew up learning to care for land and animals, how he found comfort in quiet mornings and long rides. They were different in many ways, yet something about their worlds fit together easily, like two pieces of a puzzle they hadn't known existed. As the night deepened, Naya looked at Cal with gentle gratitude. Thank you, she said softly, for helping me, for letting me stay here, for everything. Cal looked down for a moment, then back at her. I'm glad you're safe, he said. Would have been a colder world if I hadn't found you. Naya felt warmth rise in her chest, deeper than the fire beside them. The storm might have brought trouble and fear, but it had also brought her to someone kind, someone steady, someone who had given her shelter when she needed it most. As the fire burned slowly and the night grew quiet, the cabin felt less like a stranger's shelter and more like a place where two different worlds had found a gentle space to share. The next morning began with a soft, peaceful silence. The storm had finally moved on during the night, leaving behind a world covered in bright, untouched snow. When Naya opened her eyes, the sunlight coming through the window made everything look calm and pure, as if the land itself had decided to rest. She sat up slowly, feeling stronger than before. Her body no longer felt heavy, and her mind felt clearer. She stretched her hands toward the warm air, drifting from the stove, soaking in the gentle heat. Cal was already awake, standing by the door with his coat on. He had opened it just a crack to check the outside weather. When he closed it again, he noticed her watching him. "Morning," he said in his quiet voice. "Snow's settled. Looks like we'll be able to ride today." Naya nodded slowly. She had known this moment would come, but hearing it made her heart feel strangely tight. She wasn't afraid to go home, not at all, but the idea of leaving the cabin and leaving Cal's gentle presence gave her a feeling she couldn't easily name. "That's good," she said softly. "My family must be worried." Cal moved to pour warm tea into a cup and handed it to her. She accepted it gratefully, wrapping her fingers around the warm surface. "They'll be glad to see you," he said. "You're strong enough now. A little ride won't harm you." Naya sipped the tea, watching the steam rise. For a moment, neither of them spoke. There was a quiet understanding in the air, something both could feel without needing to name it. After breakfast, Cal went outside to prepare Rusty, brushing him and placing the saddle carefully. The crisp morning air made small clouds of breath rise from both man and horse. Naya watched through the window for a moment, feeling warmth in her chest as she observed the way Cal moved, calm, steady, gentle, the same way he had moved during every moment she'd been in his care. When she finally stepped outside, the cold air pressed lightly against her face. But it wasn't sharp or painful anymore. It felt crisp, clean, filled with new promise. Cal turned toward her. "You sure you're ready?" he asked. Naya nodded. "Yes." He helped her onto the horse, making sure she was steady. Then he mounted behind her, guiding Rusty forward. The snow sparkled like tiny stars beneath the bright morning sun. The land stretched out in every direction, clean and quiet. They rode in a comfortable silence. Naya felt safe with Cal behind her, his steady hands holding the reins. The horse moved smoothly through the snow, leaving a clear trail behind them. After a while, Cal spoke softly. "Your home's not too far now. Should reach the main trail soon." Naya swallowed gently. "Thank you for bringing me this far. Wouldn't let you travel alone," he said softly. "Not after all you've been through." She smiled faintly, her eyes on the endless white landscape ahead. "You've done more for me than you had to." Cal didn't answer right away. When he did, his words were thoughtful. "Sometimes life brings people to your door for a reason. Doesn't matter if you know them or not." Quote. Naya turned her head slightly, enough to glimpse his expression. His eyes were gentle, warm, like the fire that had brought her back to life. They reached a ridge where the land dipped into a valley. Far in the distance, smoke rose from a small cluster of winter lodges. Naya's home. The sight made her heart swell with emotion. Relief, joy, and something bittersweet all at once. "There," Cal said softly. "You'll be down there before long." Naya took a deep breath. "It looks beautiful from here." Cal nodded. "Your family will be happy to see you." They stopped for a moment at the top of the ridge, surrounded by open sky and quiet snow. Naya slid down from the horse, landing gently on her feet. Cal followed. She turned to face him fully. The cold made her cheeks pink, and the wind blew strands of hair against her face. Cal watched her, his eyes calm, but holding a softness she had not seen before. "I don't know how to thank you," she said quietly. "You saved my life. I wouldn't be standing here without you." "You don't need to thank me," Cal replied, his voice low but sincere. "I'm just glad you're safe." She stepped closer, her eyes shining with warmth. "Still, I won't forget what you did." Cal looked at her for a long moment. "And I won't forget finding you out there. Felt like the land brought you my way, on purpose." The wind brushed around them, gentle and cool. Naya looked toward her village again. Then back at Cal. "Will I see you again?" Cal hesitated, not out of doubt, but because he chose his words carefully. "If you want to," he said finally. "I ain't far. Your path home crosses near my land. You come by any time." Quote, Naya smiled a soft, warm smile that lit her face. "When the season turns warm, I'll come. I promise." And Cal felt his chest warm at her words, though his expression stayed gentle. "Then I'll be waiting." She took one last look at him, memorizing the kindness in his eyes, the steadiness of his presence, the quiet strength he carried in every movement. Then she stepped back, giving him a small nod. Cal lifted his hat slightly in quiet respect. "You too, Cal Turner," she said. Naya began walking down the slope toward her village. The snow crunched under her boots, and the sunlight glowed warmly on her shoulders. She felt stronger with every step, her heart steady, her mind filled with hope. Halfway down, she turned around. Cal was still there, sitting on Rusty, watching her with calm, steady eyes. He didn't wave, he didn't call out, but his presence spoke more than words could. She lifted her hand in a small gesture. Cal tipped his hat again. Then she continued her path home. As she neared her village, figures rushed out to meet her family members, calling her name, faces bright with relief and joy. She smiled and reached for them, feeling their warmth surround her. But even in that moment, even with her family close and the familiar sounds filling the air, her thoughts drifted back to the quiet cabin, the warm fire, and the gentle cowboy who had found her in the snow when hope had almost slipped away. She carried him in her heart as she entered her home. And far behind her, Cal Turner rode back across the snowy plains, the soft wind at his back, wondering how a storm had carried a stranger into his life and quietly changed his world forever.